How do Tibetans sleep in stone houses without freezing dead? Imagine thin air, stone houses, and temperatures that plunge after sunset. No forests, little fuel, no central heat. Yet families sleep and wake alive. What hidden methods keep stone homes warm when cold should win? At elevations above 4,000 meters, cold is not just uncomfortable. It is constant, penetrating, and unforgiving. On the Tibetan Plateau, winter nights regularly drop far below freezing, even when the sun is strong during the day. The air is thin, which means it holds less heat. Once warmth escapes, it does not linger. Temperature swings are extreme. A clear afternoon can feel warm in direct sunlight, yet only hours later, darkness brings rapid heat loss. Stone, which dominates the landscape, absorbs cold quickly once the sun disappears. By basic logic, living inside stone houses at this altitude should be dangerous, even deadly. Fuel is scarce. Trees do not grow at these elevations. Wood is rare and valuable. Most households rely on dried animal dung or limited biomass collected over long distances. There is never enough fuel to burn continuously through the night. Fires must be rationed carefully, sometimes lit only once a day. The environment compounds the problem. Winds sweep across open land with little obstruction. Snow reflects sunlight away instead of warming the ground. At night, heat radiates straight into the sky. Modern insulation is absent. There is no central heating. Electricity, when present, is unreliable and insufficient for warmth. Under these conditions, stone seems like the wrong material. Stone feels cold to the touch. It draws heat from the body. It should turn homes into iceboxes once the fire goes out. By all modern standards, stone houses at this altitude should be unlivable in winter, yet they are not. Families sleep inside them year after year. Children grow up in them. Elders survive decades of winters that should overwhelm the human body. Somehow, these heavy stone structures do not freeze solid. Somehow, nights are endured without constant fire. The question is not whether Tibet is cold. That is certain. The real mystery is why these stone houses, built with no modern technology, do not become traps of cold once darkness falls. At first glance, Tibetan stone houses look like a mistake. Thick rock walls, heavy roofs, bare interiors. In a place where winter temperatures plunge well below freezing, stone should act like a sponge for cold. Touch it at night, and it steals heat from your skin immediately. By modern logic, these houses should freeze solid once the sun goes down. They do not, because stone behaves differently when it is used in mass. Tibetan houses are built with extremely thick walls, often half a meter to more than a meter wide. These walls are not meant to warm quickly. They are meant to change temperature slowly. This property is called thermal mass. Materials with high thermal mass resist rapid temperature swings. They absorb heat gradually and release it just as gradually. During the day, even in winter, sunlight at high altitude is intense. The thinner atmosphere filters less solar radiation. When the sun strikes stone walls and roofs, heat penetrates deep into the structure instead of warming only the surface. The walls do not feel hot, but they are storing energy layer by layer. Once the sun sets, the process reverses. Outside air cools rapidly, but the stone does not. Heat trapped inside the walls begins to move back toward the interior. This release is slow and steady. Instead of a sudden temperature drop, indoor conditions change gradually over many hours. This is why stone houses feel stable rather than icy. The walls act like a buffer between extreme daytime warmth and brutal nighttime cold. They smooth out the swing. While the air outside may lose heat in minutes, the stone loses it over an entire night. Altitude plays an important role. The Tibetan Plateau experiences strong solar gain during the day and very dry air. Dry air allows surfaces to absorb and release heat efficiently without moisture pulling energy away. There is a little humidity to steal warmth from the walls. The shape of these houses matters too. Small windows, compact rooms, and low ceilings reduce exposed surface area. Less surface means less heat loss. Every design choice works with the stone, not against it. Stone is dangerous when it is thin and exposed. It is protective when it is massive and controlled. Tibetan builders understood this through experience, not equations. They did not fight the cold with constant heat. They slowed it down. This is the first reason these houses do not freeze solid. The stone itself becomes a silent storage system, holding on to daylight long after the sun disappears. Cold is not only a problem of temperature, it is a problem of movement. In a stone house at high altitude, every step, every climb, every pause can either conserve heat or waste it. Tibetan homes solve this by building upward, not outward. Many traditional Tibetan stone houses are vertical. The ground floor is not where people live. It is where animals are kept. Yaks, sheep, and goats are brought inside at night and sheltered below the family living space. This is not accidental. It solves two problems at once. First, animals generate heat constantly. Their body warmth rises naturally. Heat does not need to be forced upward. It moves on its own through floor gaps, stairwells, and stone structures. By placing animals below and people above, houses reuse heat that would otherwise be lost to the open air. Second, this layout changes how people move. The coldest space is the lowest level. Humans limit time there. Tasks are done quickly. Feeding animals, checking conditions. Then movement goes upward into warmer zones. This vertical path reduces heat loss from the body because people are not lingering in the coldest air. Living spaces are placed on upper floors where rising heat collects. Ceilings are often low. Rooms are compact. Heat gathers where people sit, work, and later sleep. Daily life stays concentrated in these upper areas, reducing the need to move through cold zones repeatedly. Movement inside the house follows predictable paths. Morning begins upstairs. Food preparation, prayer, and rest happen above. Trips downstairs are minimized, especially after sunset. When movement is necessary, it is deliberate and brief. This discipline matters when temperatures drop sharply at night. Vertical stacking also limits exposure to outside cold. Fewer doors open directly into living spaces. Entryways are often on the lower level. Cold air enters below, where it stays heavier and does not rise easily into the main living area. This protects the upper floors without extra materials or fuel. Waste heat is reused constantly. Heat from animals, from daytime activity, from stored warmth in stone, all drifts upward and collects where people spend the most time. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. This design is not about comfort. It is about control. By stacking life vertically, Tibetan stone houses turn movement itself into a tool for survival. People do not fight the cold room by room. They move through it carefully, staying where warmth naturally gathers. Only after understanding this movement does the next question appear. Once people reach the warmest part of the house, where exactly do they sleep so the cold cannot reach them overnight? Once people move into the warmest part of a Tibetan stone house, another problem appears. Stone floors pull heat away from the body. At high altitude, that heat loss can become dangerous long before morning. Sleeping directly on the floor is not an option. Tibetan homes solve this by lifting the body off the ground. Sleeping usually happens on raised platforms built from wood, packed earth, or stone, topped with thick layers of insulation. These platforms are not high beds. They are low, wide surfaces designed to reduce contact with cold floors while keeping the body within the warmest air layer of the room. Cold air sinks. Warm air rises. The platform places sleepers in the most stable zone between the two. Location matters. Sleeping zones are positioned away from exterior walls and far from doors or stair openings where cold air flows. The warmest corner of the upper floor becomes the sleeping area. This location is chosen carefully and rarely changes during winter. Sleeping arrangements are compact. Families do not spread out. Bodies are placed close together to reduce exposed surface area. Children and elders sleep in the center. Adults form the outer edge, blocking drafts and absorbing temperature changes. This arrangement reduces heat loss without adding fuel. Body positioning is deliberate. People sleep curled slightly rather than stretched out. Limbs are tucked close to the core. This reduces the surface area exposed to cold air and helps the body retain heat. Blankets and wool layers seal around the body, preventing warm air from escaping. Avoiding ground contact is essential. Even insulated stone floors can drain warmth through prolonged contact. Platforms act as a thermal break. Heat from the body stays with the sleeper instead of disappearing into the stone below. Movement stops once sleep begins. Nighttime activity is minimized. Every movement breaks the warm pocket created by bodies and bedding. People settle in early and remain still through the coldest hours. This sleeping system does not create warmth, it protects it. Architecture defines where the body rests. Positioning defines how heat is held. The house provides the structure. The body completes the system. But this arrangement depends on something else. Heat must already be present in the house before sleep begins. Without it, even the best sleeping position cannot carry the body through the night. The next question becomes unavoidable. When and how is heat created so it lasts until morning? In Tibetan stone houses, survival through the night depends less on how much fuel is burned and more on when it is burned. Continuous fire is impossible. Fuel is scarce, and altitude makes combustion inefficient. The solution is timing. Fires are lit during the day and early evening, not late at night. This choice is deliberate. The goal is never to keep flames going until morning. The goal is to charge the house with heat before darkness deepens. Yak dung is the primary fuel. It burns slowly and evenly, producing steady heat rather than sharp flames. During daylight hours, dung fires are used for cooking, boiling water, and heating interior surfaces at the same time. Cooking and heating are never separated. One fire must serve both purposes. As food is prepared, heat spreads into stone walls, floors, and platforms. Thick masonry absorbs warmth gradually. The house itself becomes a storage system. By late afternoon, surfaces that felt cold in the morning now hold heat beneath their exterior layers. Fire timing follows a strict rhythm. The main burn happens before sunset or shortly after. This allows heat to reach its peak while people are still active. Movement during this time is intentional. People cook, clean, prepare bedding, and reposition rugs while warmth is highest. Bodies add heat. Activity reinforces storage. As night approaches, fires are reduced or allowed to die down. Flames are rarely kept strong late into the night. Open fire after midnight wastes fuel and increases risk in enclosed stone spaces. Smoke management becomes harder. Oxygen drops. Instead, families rely on the heat already stored in the house. Once the fire goes out, movement slows. People withdraw into sleeping zones. Doors are closed. Openings are sealed. Heat loss is minimized. The house releases stored warmth gradually, hour by hour, carrying the interior through the coldest period before dawn. This discipline requires restraint. Burning more fuel feels comforting, but it shortens survival. Burning earlier extends warmth. Timing replaces intensity. Fire is also timed to daily labor. Dung must be collected, dried, and rationed. Each burn is planned. A wasted fire means colder nights later in the season. Children learn early that fire is not background comfort. It is a scheduled event. By treating fire as a temporary input rather than a constant presence, Tibetan households stretch limited fuel across weeks of winter. Heat is created once, stored carefully, and protected through stillness. But stored heat alone is not enough. Once the fire is gone and movement stops, something else must take over to prevent warmth from escaping the body. The next layer of survival exists closer than the walls and closer than the floor. It exists in the space immediately around the body itself. Once the fire is gone, the house stops adding heat. From that moment on, survival depends on preventing heat from leaving the body. Tibetan households solve this by shrinking the problem. Instead of trying to keep an entire room warm, they create small zones of warmth around people themselves. Wool is the core material. Thick wool rugs cover stone floors in sleeping and sitting areas. Wool traps air even when compressed, which makes it effective where people lie, sit, and kneel. Placed over stone, rugs slow the transfer of heat into the floor and stop cold from rising into the body. These rugs define where movement is allowed. People avoid stepping onto bare stone after nightfall. Paths inside the house are routed over insulated surfaces. Movement stays within warm zones. Cold zones are crossed quickly or not at all. Wall hangings add another layer. Wool textiles are hung on interior walls near sleeping areas. These hangings reduce radiant heat loss. Stone walls draw warmth from the body even without direct contact. Wool breaks that exchange by trapping a layer of still air between person and wall. At night, sleeping arrangements create what can be described as a cocoon. Bodies are surrounded on all sides by insulating material. Rugs below, wool blankets above, wall hangings beside. Heat generated by the body stays inside this enclosed space instead of dispersing into the room. This microclimate allows sleep even when the surrounding air cools sharply. The room does not need to remain warm. Only the space inside the cocoon does. This distinction is critical in fuel-scarce environments. Floor insulation matters most. Heat loss through the back and legs is faster than through air exposure. Thick rugs and layered textiles reduce this loss dramatically. Some households add extra layers beneath sleeping platforms during the coldest weeks. Movement is minimized once people enter these insulated zones. Adjustments are made early. Once settled, stillness protects warmth better than any material. Every movement releases trapped air and allows heat to escape. This system does not create heat, it guards it. Rugs, wool, and hangings shape the space immediately around the body, turning limited warmth into something that lasts through the night. Yet even with perfect insulation, the night still has one final danger. The hours just before dawn, when stored heat is lowest and the body is weakest. How Tibetans survive that moment reveals the final discipline of winter living. In Tibetan stone houses, the cold does not peak at midnight. It peaks just before dawn. By that hour, every source of stored warmth has been releasing heat for most of the night. Fires are long gone. Stone walls have cooled. Rugs and bedding hold less energy. The human body, still and fasting, is at its weakest point. This is the moment winter tests everything. Tibetans prepare for these hours by changing how they move, or rather, by choosing not to move at all. Once people settle into their sleeping zones, movement becomes a liability. Shifting position breaks the warm air pocket around the body. Sitting up exposes the torso to colder air. Even small adjustments allow heat to escape. Stillness is not laziness. It is heat management. Body positioning becomes critical. Sleepers curl slightly, keeping arms and legs close to the core. Feet are tucked inward. Heads are covered. Blankets are sealed carefully at the shoulders and neck, where heat loss is fastest. The goal is to reduce exposed surface area as much as possible. Breathing is also controlled. In thin, cold air, each breath carries heat away from the body. Many people sleep with their face partially covered, warming inhaled air before it enters the lungs. This simple habit reduces heat loss and prevents sudden chills. No one rushes to wake. When first light appears, people remain wrapped and still. Stone houses begin to warm slowly as sunlight returns, but that process takes time. Standing too early means stepping onto cold surfaces and into colder air layers. Instead, families wait. They listen for changes. They feel when the house begins to release warmth again. Morning tasks are delayed intentionally. Animals are not fed immediately. Cooking does not begin at once. Activity resumes only when the house can support it without draining the body's remaining heat. This patience is learned over years. The hours before dawn also reveal mistakes. If heat was not stored properly the day before, this is when it becomes clear. There is no quick fix. Fires are not relit. Fuel is saved. Endurance replaces correction. This approach is not dramatic. It is quiet and controlled. Tibetans survive the coldest hours not by fighting winter, but by refusing to give it energy. When daylight finally takes over, movement returns, warmth follows, and the cycle begins again. But winter does not always follow predictable cycles. When snowstorms trap families indoors for days, an entirely different test begins. When heavy snow settles over the plateau, movement stops. Paths disappear. Wind seals doors shut. In these moments, Tibetan stone houses are no longer places to live normally. They become closed systems that must function without outside contact. The first change is isolation. Families assume no travel and no help for days. Doors stay closed. The outside world becomes irrelevant. All attention turns inward to how the house holds heat, fuel, and people together. Space discipline comes next. The usable area of the house shrinks deliberately. Upper living floors are reduced to a single core zone where sleeping, sitting, and cooking overlap. Unused corners are abandoned. Rugs are pulled inward. Wall hangings are repositioned. The goal is to reduce the volume of space that needs to be protected from cold. Movement inside the house slows sharply. People stop pacing or standing unnecessarily. Bodies stay seated or lying down, where heat loss is lowest. Children are kept within insulated zones. Elders remain stationary. Every step is weighed against the heat it costs. Fuel rationing becomes strict. Yak dung supplies are counted carefully. Fires are lit only when multiple needs overlap. Cooking, heating surfaces, melting snow for water, and warming tools happen at the same time. Flames are kept small and burns are short. Continuous fire wastes fuel and increases risk inside enclosed stone rooms. Once the fire goes out, the house is sealed again. Curtains are tightened. Openings are closed. Heat stored in stone and insulated spaces is allowed to release slowly. The interior does not feel warm, but it stays stable. That stability is the goal. Animals housed below remain inside throughout the storm. Their body heat rises naturally, adding warmth without effort. Trips to check or feed them are brief and deliberate. No one lingers in cold zones. Psychological endurance becomes critical. Storm days feel long and repetitive. Tibetan households manage this by maintaining routine. Meals follow a schedule. Prayer continues. Wool is mended. Tools are repaired. Hands stay busy. Stillness is accepted, not resisted. Stone houses do not become prisons during storms because they are built for containment, not escape. Thick walls block wind. Small openings limit heat loss. Vertical layout separates cold from warm. When movement stops outside, the house holds steady inside. This is when the system proves itself. Not on a cold night, but during days of snow, silence, and waiting. Tibetan stone houses are not relics of the past. They are still used because they continue to solve real problems that modern systems struggle with at high altitude. Thin air, extreme cold, fuel scarcity, and isolation have not changed. The houses match those conditions with reliability rather than comfort. Modern heating requires constant energy. At 4,000 meters, fuel is expensive, electricity is unstable, and mechanical systems fail easily. Stone houses do not depend on uninterrupted inputs. They rely on mass, timing, and controlled movement. These principles remain effective regardless of technology level. The system also adapts. Many homes now include small solar panels, metal stoves, or improved windows. Yet these additions do not replace the core design. They sit on top of it. Thick walls still store heat. Vertical layouts still separate warm and cold zones. Sleeping platforms and wool insulation still protect bodies when fuel runs low. This is not romantic. Stone houses are cold by modern standards. Comfort is limited. Movement is restricted. Winters demand discipline. Fuel collection is labor-intensive. Storm isolation is real. These homes do not eliminate hardship. They make it survivable. What keeps the system working is not nostalgia. It is alignment. Architecture matches climate. Daily routines match fuel availability. Movement patterns match heat behavior. Nothing depends on excess. Younger generations sometimes leave these homes for concrete buildings, but many return during harsh winters. Concrete cools faster. Thin walls lose heat quickly. Stone still holds. This resilience explains why the system persists. It does not promise ease. It promises continuity. In places where winter can still isolate families for days and fuel cannot be wasted, stone houses remain a practical solution. They work today for the same reason they worked centuries ago. They respect limits. And in extreme environments, respecting limits is what keeps people alive. Stone houses on the Tibetan plateau reveal a different way of surviving winter. Not by overpowering the cold, but by slowing it, guiding movement, and protecting heat where it matters most. Walls, floors, animals, and routines work together as one system. But stone is not the only answer humans found. Far to the east, families sleep underground inside carved earth, using an entirely different strategy. How do northern Chinese communities survive winter nights inside cave homes without freezing to death?